Y'all, this is some of the best comic booking that I have seen in a hot minute, and we got to talk about it. Let's do it. Shellheads, it's good to be back in studio. I want to do something a little bit different with this video. Usually, we've been talking about the legacy stories. We will still be doing that, but I want to take time to talk about the current run of comics because some amazing storytelling has been taking place over the course of the last 6 months or so. And with issue 7 dropping, being the first issue of the first major story and the prologue over with, I wanted to give an on ramp of sorts to let you all know that there is amazing things happening, and now is the perfect time to jump in. So, if you are looking for new Turtles stories, things with some weight, some depth, some substance, now is the time to jump in. This is not meant to replace going to your local comic book shop, and spoilers are ahead, but I will not be hitting every single issue. This is meant to give you a look into this world, but nothing will replace going and picking up the issues yourself. But let's go ahead and jump into it. We left off with issue 150 and the Turtles going their own way. Same continuity, though, just a soft relaunch. This continuity is over a decade in maturity. There has been a lot that has been poured into this world, these characters, and the situations. But Jason Aaron and friends have really been able to capture something fresh and have been able to tell a story that is familiar for longtime fans, but is something new and different. So, issue 1 starts off with this style of storytelling that really tries to capture the way that Eastman and Laird fleshed out the individual stories back in the day. The individual turtles each had their own one shot that covered their character, told you more about them. He takes a similar approach with the first 4 issues, each one covering where are they now. Here's the thing though, all gas, no brakes. We don't get the details of what happened in the in between. That's coming on down the line. We'll be getting that in its own separate run. What we get here, though, is where are they now after an indeterminate amount of time has passed since they all decided to go their own way. Issue 1 covers Raph. He's in prison where the Foot Clan is trying to kill him. And the issue is spent watching him try to escape from prison after he has been framed, right, for the murder of the prison warden. They find him with a sigh in his chest, and so naturally, he has been framed for the murder. We'll dig into a little bit more of the circumstances, but the issue ends with Raph escaping from prison and fleeing to Japan, where he meets up with Mikey. Mikey is our second turtle to get a one shot. This sees him becoming a famous TV star since we last saw him, but something's missing: his family. Okay, so thus far, with these first 2 issues, and we will see this develop more, where Jason Aaron is taking what's familiar but spinning it a bit. See, with the first issue, we have to ask the question: Raph's a hothead, right? Raph has a temper. Did he do it? Did he actually kill the prison warden? Because Jason Aaron's been promising a darker take on the turtles. So did it happen? Same thing with Mikey. Mikey's lovable, right? He's the Joker, right? He's jovial, right? But it's just on paper. Right now, It's just at surface level. We see that Mikey is struggling underneath. So you're still getting hints and airs of what we know to be true about the characters, but spun out. With Raph, he's like, he understands that he's in over his head and he needs his family. Mikey is disenfranchised and separated from everybody because he doesn't have his family. And so we're thrown into this world where nothing really seems exactly right. And so in issue 2, Raph shows up, but so do more ninjas. They show up at his apartment and the Foot Clan attack, and just in the nick of time, Raph shows up and helps him out. But Mikey's not happy to see him. And again, we don't really know why. We don't really know what has happened. But Mikey is definitely at odds and angry toward his brother, especially in comparison to what we normally see out of Mikey. So by the end of issue number 2, you are very aware of the fact that Mikey's state of mind is definitely different than how it used to be. You see the outlet of him having this life and expressing his jovial nature, but deep down inside, he's still not happy. And Jason Aaron clearly understands this character and how he fits into the larger team while never forgetting Mikey's enduring qualities and desire to be loved by those he cares about. Mikey is as complex as ever. But this leads to issue number 3, and this one centers around Leo. He's doing, of course, what he does best, soul searching. He's in India. But as with the other issues, he gets attacked by the Foot Clan. Jason Aaron feels like he's trying to mine the depths of how Peter Laird would talk about Leo and describe Leo during the Mirage era. And on some level, I really appreciate that. I love the Mirage books, which somehow remain the most underrated and underloved take on the Turtles, despite being literally the source material. And anything that strives to feel more like that wonderful, weird, and wacky world hits home with me and has my respect. Mind you, though, as Leo is doing his soul searching, there's still this not quite right nature to the whole situation. I always make an effort to consider the intent of the writer and their story. And so I think on that level, with how Mirage this feels, that this does feel like a bit of harmony for how I like Leo to be written. The intent of the story here is something that I agree with. It's oddly zen, very spiritual, but more in a Denny O'Neil kind of way than, well, an IDW Turtles kind of way. But he's able to get away from the Foot Clan and go find Mikey and Raph out in Tokyo. And then we get the really the dark note of the series one shots. It's Donnie's issue. So thus far, we have Raph broke out of prison and made his way to Tokyo, framed for murder. So, wanted man. Then we have Mikey, television star, has to leave Japan because they're being pursued by the Foot. Leo, he is broken out of his time of silence and solitude and is now embarking on this adventure to try and find his brothers because the Foot Clan, who remember we left off during the last volume with kind of a truce of sorts between Karai and the Foot and the Turtles. They were on a good foot, but they get to Donnie and he's been locked up in a pen. He gets captured in kind of like a fight pit. So, following his trip through time in the previous volume of TMNT, Donnie has been wandering the outskirts of New York City. But the effect of using magic is starting to take its toll on his body and his mind. So again, we need to recap of sorts. We need to wind the clock back to pre new number ones. In the lead up to the road to 150, Donnie was doing a lot of time travel. And as it usually goes in time travel stories, there's usually some consequence for going back in time repeatedly. And he's warned during that series that he is going to start to feel the effects. And you can see that highlighted in the way that Donnie is portrayed here. Things just aren't right. Things just are off from center. And so we see Donnie going off on his own in on the outskirts of New York, really starting to feel the effects, and he is captured in kind of like a mutant fight pit. See, what stood out to me about Jason Aaron's take so far is he asks the question, what if your strongest asset is taken away from you? And we've gotten that. Raph found an outlet for his rage in prison. Mikey buried his pain over his brother's split with trademark humor. Leo did some soul searching, asking what he did wrong. For Donnie, Jason Aaron showcases what happens when you lose the greatest weapon you have, his mind. There's moments where he can't remember his own name, let alone his brother's or adoptive father, Splinter, which adds a tragic flair to this number 4. Furthering the overall tragedy is the fact that the Turtles are still divided, even though we're hitting a point where the band has been brought back together. So while Donnie isn't always my favorite turtle, I have to say this one may be my favorite issue thus far. It's dark and highlights aspects of Donnie that commonly get disregarded because he's usually all brains. He's usually the tech guy. But he's also the heart of the team in a lot of ways. He's the glue that keeps them together. He's the reminder of their father. And usually we don't get the physical attributes of Donnie on bright display. But when his brain's gone, what are you going to do? We see him holding his own here. So they're in a mutant fight pit of sorts. And there are some humans that are poking at and bullying smaller mutants. Well, Donnie's not having any of that. And he starts beating up on the humans that are running the fight pit, who are picking on these smaller mutants. So you see this internal code and integrity intact with a reminder that Donnie is a very capable fighter in his own right. And it's kind of funny. The brothers show up expecting to have to bail out the other brother, and really, they don't need to. Really, they don't have to help him. And they realize Donnie has kind of taken care of business on his own. In this case, like I said, it's really emphasizing that just because the four turtles are back together doesn't mean that everything is good or that they are truly a team again. So, first four, we're back together. We got to figure out why is the foot targeting them and what exactly is going on. And that's where we get number five. And you'd think, though, that you were going to get more answers, but nope, we are getting another one shot, this time for Corrupt DA Hale, the newest villain for this version of the Turtles. Has some ties to Karai. And we see his backstory fleshed out that a mutant killed his parents. And because of this, he hates all mutants. He was a prosecutor for a while because he was already a prosecutor. He comes in line with Karai and with the Foot. Karai heard of him and somehow brought him into the fold. But again, there are some holes that need to be filled in with Karai's story as well. She's off on her own side quest of sorts, but has set up Hale to basically be able to wield the Foot Clan. But because of his backstory hitting mutants, he is squarely targeting the turtles. But we don't really know where this leaves Karai. We need to again recap a little bit to get the full context of what's going on. We don't know whether or not he has his own plans or if he has been given marching orders by Karai and the dragon spirit of sorts that has made residence within her. Yes, she, right before the relaunch, she got possessed by a dragon spirit of sorts that's making her act evil and do evil things, which is a shift back to OG Karai in some ways. Because in the comics, for a while, she has been closer to chaotic good, an anti hero of sorts. And it's like this split personality sort of situation that we have right now with her character. And so we see that Karai is off on her own little journey. She went through this portal and she left Hale in charge before she left. And we don't know exactly what she's doing or what she left him to do. So it's complicated, which plays into the duality of Karai's current character coming out of the last volume and the road to 150. We get this scene where Karai presents Hale with the mutant that killed his parents, and along with this weapon that he's supposedly supposed to use to kill him. And there's this emotional back and forth. He doesn't want to do it at first, but something clicks in his mind and he gets all riled up and he's about to go after this mutant and she stops him. We don't know motives. We don't know exactly what all of this is getting at, but she stops him. And so the mutant lives. And so we see that he knows where the turtles are after Karai leaves because he's the one who sends the Foot after them. And in the back half of issue 5, we get the return of one Casey Jones, and he is back. It looks like Jason Aaron has brought him back to be the high note, right? We don't know what exactly is going on. We got Foot Clan everywhere. The turtles are surrounded. The turtles are on the back foot. Casey Jones comes back and he's busting heads. He does as Casey Jones does. He dispatches of like a dozen Foot before Hale shoots him in the face. There is no let me up. Leaves him for dead. No clue what actually happens to him. And that is the end of number 5. So that's where we pick up with number 6 with the debut of the incredible artwork of Juan Ferreira as TMNT's new resident artist. The opening of issue 6 features a mysterious narrator ruminating on how karate can be just as damaging to its practitioner as the opponents that they might face. Every part of the puncher's form must be in unison. Without that unity in oneself, even the most learned master will be left a pile of jumbled muscles, bones, and 4 busted knuckles where a fist should have been. It's a saying that perfectly fits the state of the turtles themselves. Though we've reunited and we've traveled back to their home, current Mayor Hale has transformed the Big Apple into a death trap for the turtles, with the Foot Clan's forces ambushing them at every turn. And on top of that, the mysterious event that led the heroes to split up is still eating at them. Raph, Leo, and Mikey can't stop trading verbal and physical blows. Where still, Donnie's mental state still continues to fray. Now, again, I love what they're doing here. This is a riff on Return to New York in a way, which is a seminal work, which we will be covering here on the channel from the Mirage run. It has been redone in TV form. IDW had their swing at it. It is an incredible story. And so, again, you feel like you're going to get this feel good story with the Turtles back in New York. They are back home. But no, says I, they are not getting that because remember, they aren't happy with each other. And the general populace isn't happy with them. It really feels like Jason Aaron is taking the turtles back to the sewers, forced back into the shadows, not as in the public eye as they have been in other recent versions. While other writers have split the turtles up before, none of them have brought as much of a raw emotional edge to it as Jason Aaron does. He understands what few TMNT writers do. The turtles are united not just as fighters, but as brothers. That unity being fractured is dangerous and nearly gets them killed more than once during their race through New York. I need to highlight something very key here because we haven't talked about it up to this point. Donnie's depiction. He's gone. He got them crazy eyes, man. He's got that faraway look in his eyes. The lights are on, man. Nobody's home. And he's carrying around a dead rat. He's carrying around a dead rat. And he thinks it's Splinter. And he's talking to it like it's Splinter. And he thinks the rat is talking to him like it's Splinter, who in this continuity is currently dead, coming out of the last volume. So the book starts off with the turtles on a trash boat looking thing. And it's kind of like, you see them approaching New York but it's not the usual way. They're on a trash freighter, and it looks like it might be in the Hudson. They're entering into the city. You can see the skyline and everything. And they're arriving into town, but they don't want to go straight into the city because, again, the Foot Clan's after them. And again, they are still wanted turtles. But they go into a sewer opening on the side of a wall, jump into it, and Raph, you can see, kind of doesn't like this. He's like, "Why are we hiding like a bunch of common criminals? We've saved the city so many times, and people know about us now. Like humans know about mutants now. Remember, we have Mutant Town. That is a place, but they don't want to bring all of this trouble to Mutant Town." But Leo says that in the eyes of the law, they are criminals because Raph has been framed and the rest of them are accessories after the fact. So we, the reader, know that it wasn't Raph that killed the warden. We know that it's the Foot. But like we talked about, he was framed. Now, we also see Mikey, who at this point in the story really resents his brothers for abandoning him. He begins to scold Raph here, pretty much insinuating that it's Raph's fault for putting him in this situation. At first, you could tell this kind of bothers Raph, but he kind of shakes it off and focuses on the Foot. They brought they thought that they were on good terms with Karai. She was a good guy, right? For all they knew. Like, at least the last time they met, she seemed like she was a good guy. They don't know about her getting possessed by that dragon spirit and all of that stuff. Then Mikey says that his sources in Japan have told him that Karai is working on some super secret project there in New York, but that nobody knows what it is. And that kind of falls in line with what we've been seeing. We do get an interesting comment from Leo that says that whatever's going on, it doesn't feel like Karai. Everything that's happening, even though it's the Foot Clan, it doesn't feel like Karai. Now, we don't know, and I like this ambiguity that we have right now. We don't know whether or not Hale is undermining Karai and pulling the strings himself now that Karai went off on her mission, which it kind of points to because he goes back and kills that mutant after Karai leaves. He went back, he tracked down that mutant, knew where the mutant was, and disobeyed her and killed the mutant. But we don't know what part of the story the dragon is going to factor into. And so they're doubling down on this conflict between the brothers. And it does result in physical blows after Mikey tells us that he's been fired from his TV show because of what happened. Again, basically blaming Raph. Leo, being the consummate leader, tries to step in, pointing out that fighting between them is only hurting Donnie and only continuing to fracture his already precarious mental state. Now, this whole situation is heating up. It's all hitting this crescendo between the brothers. They cannot get on the same page, and the verbal insults turn into physical blows, which I know some shellheads are a huge fan of. Okay, I don't need to do this all the time. I think that this is great for in certain parts of the story, but I don't think we need to be constantly antagonistic between Raph and Leo. And Mikey, that's a different story. Because I for a long time, shellheads and fans of the channel, Mikey's my favorite. But this is a different take on Mikey. Normally, we don't get resentful Mikey. We don't get angry Mikey. But this time, he's hurt. He's really upset. And so we get this final moment where they all come to blows and Mikey's had enough. When Donnie tries to step in and say, stop fighting, Splinter doesn't want them to keep fighting. He finally lets him have it. Yo, that's not Splinter. Splinter's dead, man. That's a dead rat. And this kind of wakes Donnie up a little bit. This kind of sets him straight a little bit. And it to a point where the other brothers stop and they realize the gravity of what this has done to Donnie, where it's like he's breaking all over again. And he realizes exactly what's what. And the whole situation hits this fever pitch where the brothers, they're at each other's throats. The public hates him. And now they're even more broken and realizing the gravity of exactly where they're at. Now, this is where we get the end of the issue where the turtles are surrounded by cops. The angry public is closing in, and we get a closing narration. Now, I think this is really important that we get the actual lines. So I'm going to go ahead and read a part of the quote. It says, "A broken family cannot endure. There have always been tensions between the Hamato brothers, but their differences have never driven them this far apart. They need each other to survive what is coming, to survive an enemy who has grown stronger than ever. I pray that they will remember the lessons of the past, that they seek a new way forward. I pray, as that is all that I can do now. From so far away, I pray for my students, for my sons. I pray that you will hear my voice from beyond the veil between worlds. We are not what we were, but what we are will have to be enough for busted knuckles and one dead rat." So the voice is Splinter. Now, we have no idea exactly what is going on. We don't know if this is the spirit of Splinter. We've seen plenty of mysticism. That's not new for the turtles. We can definitely rest in that explanation, but we don't necessarily know if that's exactly if this is leading towards Splinter coming back or not. But he's still looking in, which asks the question: has he been talking to Donnie? Has he actually been hearing Splinter's voice? Now, yes, he is shot out right now with the dead rat in the whole 9 yards. But he seems to be quoting the actual words of Splinter here. So again, more questions than answers. I don't know. Shredder is also gone right now. Karai is leading the foot. So who knows? Maybe we will eventually see the return of both Splinter and Shredder, because last time we saw Shredder, he was a good guy. He had turned over a new leaf and was leading the turtles for a while. So we could see some interesting things. Issue 6 is essentially the close of an arc. 7 picks up with what seems like the new norm, which I know will be celebrated by some shellheads. I know some shellheads prefer turtles that are in the sewers, out of the public eye, telling darker stories and not beloved by all. And for those fans, for those of you that like that form of storytelling, y'all, it's time to eat and eat well. Like I said, usually Return to New York is returning as heroes. This time we have TMNT versus New York, and I personally really like this twist where the Turtles are facing off against the court of public opinion as well as foot enhanced police forces. Because remember, Hale's the mayor. He controls the police force as well as the Foot Clan. And so they are forced into the sewers of New Jersey because they need to get out of New York. Now, there is layered storytelling that is happening because we get this moment where the turtles are surrounded, and it really does seem like all hope is lost because these Foot Clan that are dressed up like firemen are surrounding the turtles. They're fighting against the turtles, and the turtles fight back. Now, the court of public opinion is just seeing the turtles fighting firemen and police officers, on top of being wanted for the death of the warden. And so it seems like everything is against the turtles right now. And so that's where we're. So, like I said, let me know if you want to see me cover more of the modern stuff. Some amazing storytelling is happening right now. Now is the time to pick it up. Sound off down in the comments. Let me know if you're tracking what you've enjoyed about the run so far. But until next time, Cowabunga Shellheads.